Hello to all you Tea Time Caravan, and welcome back to the podcast. I always introduce as weird reflection. Anyway, I know. Hey, how's you guys my co-host, Katherine?
Yes, hello.
Co-host. And we have got another movie for you. It's that time of the month. Yeah?
Oh, sorry, I was like, I didn't catch what you just said.
Well, I just said that, it's the time of the month.
Oh, yes, it is, it's time for Gamera to help more kids.
It's what he's good at. He didn't used to be, but he's got better at it. Anyway, how have you been?
I've been okay. Nothing too particularly interesting. I've gotten back into my read a bunch of Yuri manga mood, so that's what I've been doing. I finished some. I've made some more progress in Kamen Rider that we'll talk about whenever we do what is basically the Kamen Rider segment.
Yeah. The mandatory Kamen Rider segment. Yeah. I missed school. That's nice.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Who knows what I'll do now, but we'll see. I'm glad to be done. That shit was terrible.
Are you done? Like, this is your, last year
Yes.
or whatever? Okay, sick.
I'm all done. I'm graduating. Have a master's now. Which I don't recommend, to be honest. Don't go to grad school.
No, I did mine. I thought it was okay, but it's definitely not for everyone.
I will say, well, it was also in combination with law degree, which I don't know if I'd recommend either, but But yeah, I haven't been up to much other than just oh, look, all this time I have to do other things, which I'm trying to do. I obviously have to get a job at some point, but
Right, try for at least a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have my convocation next month. But alright. Do you want to just head into the Kamen Rider segment?
Yeah, let's do the Kamen Rider segment. I have finished Agito, and I am 3 episodes into Gaim.
See, this is poetic because, as everyone knows, the next season after Agito is Ruki, and Kamen Rider Gaim is a ripoff of Ruki, because Kenya Richie really likes Ruki.
Yes, I've already seen Ryuki and Faiz, so which I'm sure I've mentioned that before. So
yeah,
I'm kind of just jumping around, doing them in a bit of a free form.
Have you seen Blade?
Yes, I have seen Blade. The first half of Blade is kind of just fine, but the back half is great.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe they got Wesley Snipes for it. But yeah, tell me about Agito. The Inoue show.
I think Agito is mostly pretty good. I I think the way that it we talked a bit about this last time, and I think up until the end, the thing I really like is that all the writers basically live in different genres.
Yeah.
uh,
I think I didn't even think about that when I first watched it, but it is like true on reflection.
it's like Hikawa's, like Hikawa's a cop.
He's got to do with police politics. Who's the guy? Toru is the
Yeah,
fucking
yes,
the fucking
Hojo.
funniest guy. Hojo. Um,
You know, it's Ashihara is just suffering.jpg. What miserable things will happen to Ashihara this week?
it's like it, I just really want to write a Shaggy Dog story.
And Shoichi is like a bit. He's like a bit more of a like textured and like slightly more unsure version of Yusuke from
Yeah,
Kuga.
definitely. Like I think I saw someone. I don't know how much I necessarily agree with this person, but he felt like someone who like didn't like Kuga as much and preferred Agito because he felt like Godai was a bit too much. He was too varnished and polished, like he was too clean in a way.
Yeah, I think
No pun intended.
this is the thing with Kuga. I think it's arguably the biggest flaw of the show is that Kuga has a very gritty and realistic aesthetic, but
Yeah,
uh but Godai
Godai himself is
himself,
like too.
he's too like he's too clean. He's too much of the like perfect straight
Yeah,
hero type, and I think it's weird. I think that's the part of Kuga I kind
yeah.
of bounced off the most.
I think that's fair, and I think there's a degree where sometimes it's like, damn, all the police just like him now. It's a bit like, well, okay. Though I guess it took a while for him to get there. Um, I will say it does like make the fact that when he like has to struggle with like how destructive his powers are a bit more interesting, because then he has to be like the perfect hero has to be like, well, what the fuck do I do? You always see like the people who always, well, maybe you don't, you personally don't, but like you always see people always reposting that one clip of like him just beating the shit out of the porcupine guard.
Yeah, that episode was really good, but that's not like a
Yeah,
universal.
yeah, but also for me, the one my go to is like when he does the rider kick and like the entire neighborhood explodes,
Yes.
and then he's just like, oh, just being a rider means I'm causing more destruct. My power has gotten so strong that even just like doing normal rider stuff is like causing collateral damage I don't know I can account for, and that's scary kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, Shuichi is like definitely more. It's been a while, obviously, and I think to agree, like the fact that Yusuke has like the fact that he is the perfect hero makes it easier for me to remember him. Whereas like Shuichi, I'm like I kind of forget a lot of his deal besides him having amnesia and also being kind of nice and uh remembering the eating scene.
Right. I also think it's
um,
interesting to compare Agito to Fies because
well,
they're
yeah, that's like
but
the obvious one.
yeah, because they're kind of the same thing, where it's like dealing with people who have like some sort of special power as like the next stage in human evolution. Um,
Yeah,
but Agito kind of plays this a lot more straight and is kind of about the struggle of like self acceptance in a
yeah.
world that
Though
is
also it's
not
kind of like
yet ready for the
it's also
Agitos.
complicated because because also complicated by like in Agito the villains are like we want to stop the next stage of
Yeah,
evolution. Whereas
yeah,
in Fies, it's like the villains are like the ones who are like we're like well I guess it's like in layman's terms it might just is like an X-Men situation where Smart Brain is like Magneto kind of except more without maybe the nuance that Magneto was brought into later. Um, And then you have like, we have like Smart Brain is like, oh, we're gonna do Orphanok supremacy, but then you have like the heroic anti-hero Orphanok faction with Kiba and the others who are just like, I just want to live a peaceful life, but maybe I can't because of just the circumstances around me, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to me because like Vice also has like, oh, the Orphanox have to like undergo some form of self-acceptance, but I think it's a lot more cynical about the idea that they represent some like grander evolution for people as a whole.
Yeah. Well, part of it is they have to die first.
Yes.
Which doesn't help. Like, there's sort of like a trauma inherent in all the Orphanox just because, like, they died. And, like, the trauma and the ability, the fact that, like, traumatized people struggle to communicate and that brings more tragedy is kind of, like, one of the core things about Vice. Which is, like, I think, like, even, communication is also an issue in Agito, but it's also, like, it's not, like, to the same... Like, it feels like more like... Well, it's not... It doesn't feel like as necessarily as thematic as much as, like, part of the puzzle box kind of thing. And sometimes played for, like, laughs kind of thing.
Right. Agito, I think, is kind of using it as, like, it's a bit of a... I think Agito is kind of going for, like, because it has a lot of the, like, Old Testament, like, motifs. It's kind of going for, like, a abusive parent who wants to like rein their children in kind of idea.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty fun.
There's a good line. There's a good line where like Hikawa beats God and he's like, "What are you?" And he's like, "I'm just a human." And it's good. Man, I do love Agito though.
I also really like Agito. It's funny you call it a mystery box because it does kind of have that like, oh, what happened on the Akatsuki like Lost vibe, but it's like years before. It's like years before that type of storytelling becomes popular in the Anglosphere.
I guess that's like Lost is like more mid-aughts. It's still a bit early on.
Yeah, whereas like Agito's like 2001.
Yeah. I do think, like, I remember when I watched Agito, I think this is a pretty common sentiment, like, the show kind of peaks episode 42, and then the last stretch feels a bit more meandering. I don't know how you feel about that, but,
I actually kind of like the last stretch, because it's interesting seeing the characters, like, try to move on with their lives, and, like, build, like, some sense of, like, where they're gonna go after they like are done with this Kamen Rider thing. I know the like last arc of Agito is a little unpopular, but I actually thought it's like pretty unique.
Yeah, I don't remember it too much, admittedly, because I guess it's one of those things where I just didn't commit it to memory. But I remember being like a bit more down on it, but still ultimately like it didn't ruin the show for me.
Right, that's fair.
And we all love Dr. Kino.
Yes, incredible character. He's not even in the show that much. Like he's like he shows up pretty late, even though he's mentioned a lot, and then he dies before the last arc. So he's only really in it for like my gut feel is about 10 episodes, but he really steals the show in those 10 episodes.
Yeah. This reminds me of like. Maybe I shouldn't say this because there's spoilers for a show that we're going to cover on the Made podcast in the future. But I'll keep it vague. There's an Ultraman show in the future where there's like a villainous character who, in my mind, was like, oh man, that character must have been there for like an arc or something, and it turns out he's there for like literally one episode, and it's like, oh, I just left a good impression, I guess. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I think one of the memory that I have of a show that I don't. It's a scene that sticks with me, but I haven't seen many people like mention. There's like a scene where like I think he's talking to Hikawa. Shuichi is when he and Hikawa they first of all, it's funny that Hikawa is the last person to know.
Yes.
It's the funniest thing in the world. And second, I think there's a scene where like they're eating ice cream and like Hikawa says something like, I think like, I forget the specific thing, but he says something like he says something serious, and then like Shuichi kind of laughs it off, but then he kind of just turns away. His face looks really serious for a second. I was like, oh, that's some good character work there, like really understated. Other iconic moment is earlier in the show where Shuichi thinks he's gonna die, and he's like, "I'm gonna die. You won't even eat my cabbages." One day I want to watch there's another anime show from the 90s called Guiron, which is like the show he did between Jetman, I guess, like Agito. And like it was from our Reddit, like it was originally going to be like a TV like Hokkaido show, because they either way also wrote the Hokkaido movie in that same time in 1995. But it ended up being like a different thing instead. And I mentioned like years back when I watched Jetman that like Jetman doesn't necessarily feel like, there's a degree which it feels like you can tell this is an anime show, but it also feels a lot like this is like still in the mold of like a Sentai of that era, and you don't have a lot of the things you associate with anime like really like hitting your face in the way that it does in Agito and Faiz. And I've heard that like Changeurion is like the show where it's just like more like the Rosetta Stone for future anime. In a way.
Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll check that out someday.
Yeah, I'm keeping that in my back pocket for someday. I also know that the protagonist of that show is played by the guy who plays Asakura and Ryuki.
Yo, that's not.
Which is funny, just like knowing like the serial killer guy and Ryuki's gonna play like a bumbling in a way protagonist. I'm just like, I'll have to see this at some point. Also, how's that movie? Did you see the movie?
The Agito movie is pretty good.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot from it. I just remember it would pretty impress me at the time, and like G4 is a pretty cool suit.
Right.
It's definitely better than the Ryuki movie, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I liked the Agito movie. I liked the what's the word? I liked the like conflict between G3 and G4, and like the like, oh, fighting to live versus fighting to die. I thought it was fun. And it's basically
Nice.
a movie about how the military is evil. So like,
Yeah, well, you love to see that. How's Gaim?
the first 3 episodes of Gaim are perfectly fine. They did not leave a particularly strong impression on like like me either way.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what you think as it goes on. I think Gaim is pretty neat. It's also not my favorite.
Yeah, hopefully.
But I do love the suits because they're cooler than they have any right to be. Which, funny enough, is like kind of like how I feel about Gav, which is a show I need to catch up on really badly. Because like Gav is also like, we made suits based off of a silly gimmick. This time being snacks. And I'm still like before episode 10, so like I saw that like around like the early 10s, Gav gets like a cake form, and I'm like, somehow this looks badass, and I need to see it. Hold on, let me see. I need to catch up on that show.
Please
it's
do.
looking almost. It's probably like it's in the 30s right now. So yeah, that's it. Do you see the image?
Oh, yes, let me have a look. Oh, I kind of fuck with this. This is a much better design than the Gaim designs, which I really do not vibe with.
Oh, you don't like the banana?
No, I'm sorry. Gaim?
Oh no.
Gaim and X8 are like, Gaim and X8 are like, aesthetic repellent to me.
I think X8's goofy, but I can understand it. Like I kind of like X grew on me, but I get it. With Guy, I'm like, I think they just did a good job translating the fruits into armor looks. Personally, I think Zangetsu is really cool, the melon one. Not every Guy suit's gonna be a banger, obviously, for me, but I do actually like the banana one. I do like Baron. I don't know why he swings the lance like a sword, but I do wonder why they pick the themes they do though. Because based on interviews with Genish or Richie, it's like they already decided the theme before they got him aboard the writer.
Yeah, I kind of just assumed they throw shit at the wall and work it from there.
It seems like they wanted to do a samurai theme, and they were trying to first they're do we combine it with kanji or poetry, and then they eventually decided fruits for some reason, and then they okay, we want to try and go for something more early aughts writer, so we're gonna get Genaro Ruchi, noted fan of early aughts writer. And they were okay, we want you on board. This is what we want you for, this kind of tone. Can you do that? Will you agree to do this show? And they're okay. And he said only when he agreed to do the show, they were anyway, the protagonist is an orange. Yeah. I'm curious to hear what you think. I think Gaim's neat, but I also think it's definitely a weird joke, because I feel there's probably some people who overblow it and hype it. And there's some people who just are kind of too negative on it, because they have there's a bunch of people who can sometimes just be not normal about Genaro Ruchi. So
yeah,
these people who are oh man, Madoka Magica is so misogynist, and did you know he wrote Sayano Uta? He's an evil man.
And so fucking Genaro Ruchi says Monica girls are just like the Taliban. Awful discourse, but let's not dwell on that.
Yeah. Calling you out. Who you listening to this? Yes, you. But yeah, do you have any idea what you're gonna watch after?
After Gaim, it'll probably be X8 or O's, one of the two. And then after that, it's gonna be whichever one you don't, whichever one I didn't do that time.
Okay, making your way downtown.
Yeah, fast. And then I think I'll try a show or writer or something.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I've seen, not finished because it's on my drop, but I've seen every Heisa writer. And I'm picking away Black in a group watch kind of situation, but it's been really slow. But it is looking for first exposure to show a writer. And I feel I feel I've been at this long enough. Well, there's no reason for me not to watch show writer. Especially now that I watched so much 70s Ultraman. It'll be whoa, this is compared to 70s Ultraman, this is crazy. But yeah, if you see anything else, you don't have to just talk about Kamen Rider.
No, I suppose not, but it is what we've been doing. Like, and I feel like it's at least like kind of vaguely on theme for the pod, so I feel
Yeah,
like a bit better talking about it.
yeah. But you
Um,
can say whatever you want, especially because you're like, we talk about whatever on the main pod, and like I don't have as much to bring because I'm usually bringing stuff every week to that pod, but you can bring
yeah,
stuff.
let's see. Uh, I think this time we're good. Maybe for next time I'll pick something out that I like watched within the past month, and I'll just try to show it to the audience for like 10
Sure,
minutes or something.
nice. Yeah, I'm like in I'm in a spot where I'm like I just finished on the Toku front I finished Bokenger after like 2 years. Super Sentai season. That's the adventure one. I talk about more by the going to be out by the time people listen to this, but most recently recorded main pod. But yeah, that one's interesting. It's pretty good. I do think the fact that it's a show based on adventure serials does mean it kind of stumbles into colonial logic without realizing it when you think
Right,
about
that
it.
makes sense. Just kind of like uncritically, like sort of like lifting stuff from adventure serials without like thinking through the
Yeah,
implications.
because like, oh yeah, like the spirit of adventure is the power to dream, and not like thinking like, well, how does this connect to like frontier mentality, or even just like the basic idea of like the plot's about collecting an a special government organization that exists to collect magical artifacts from the places that they belong to keep them safe from criminals who will steal them. Um, and that kind of stuff. It's just it's
Yeah.
Killmonger voice.
Yeah.
Uh, um, so I think it's interesting on that front. To think about at least because it doesn't explore those issues as much as I'd like, and that's kind of a problem with all these shows. But I'm more than anything, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm finally done. I can pick another Sentai season to do. Also, I haven't started yet. But I'm thinking like maybe it'll be nice to like branch into other lesser known Toku stuff. And obviously, I do. I think I should be like, oh, I should do show a Kamen Rider now. But there's also a lot of Sentai to watch. But also, like, there's like lesser known Toku stuff on the fringes. Like I think one I want to try and watch coming up. There's like Tomika did like a hero series called Ryukendo. It's like a sort of like a magic dragon kind of theme thing. I kind of want to watch that. And then like they went on to do like 2 rescue themed Toku hero shows after that, and I want to look at those 2. So maybe I'll try and pick away at like some other like outside of the big 3 stuff, because I'm like it's good to like. There's like definitely like what's the term like non-experimentation a lot sometimes in the Toku fandom, especially when it's like a lot of Toku fans are just Rider fans, and then eventually maybe they break out into Sentai and Ultraman.
But there's a
Um,
lot like outside.
yeah, but also because of this, like this, unfortunately, this bias translate as well to the fan subbers, which means you can get each time a new Kamen Rider shows, you get like there's like 4 subgroups subbing the new Kamen Rider show, and there's like for each Kamen Rider season, there's maybe like 3 to 4 sub options. Can people do like, oh, I did my new scrub, here's my new retranslation that's better than the old release, and meanwhile it's like other shows that by all accounts are big and important are like languishing because they don't have the Kamen Rider name, or even even like the Super Sentai name attached to it, kind of thing. It's like, damn, please, a crumb of like care for one of these other shows, please. But yeah, I've also just been picking away at like some kind of freak rewatches, but like some Kids Idol anime. I kind of like never really finished, but like I saw most of. Being like Aikatsu and Prepara.
I would love to try this.
Yeah. Akatsu is like a sunrise show, and it's more grounded. It's like more about like, oh, these kids go to an idol school and they like learn about the industry, the quote unquote industry. Like it's not like the real industry, but like kind of like a more consumable for like kids television version of the industry.
Right.
Also with like some zany training resequences like this. There's like a trope of like Naikatsu, like, oh, they have to climb a rock mountain as part of the training. And like I years back I watched the first season, which is the first 50 episodes, and didn't finish it for personal reasons. But I'm like, okay, it's been long enough, I should go back and do it. And meanwhile, like Pre-Power is like a rival franchise called the Pretty Series. It's like the second. This is gonna be complicated to explain, so I won't get into it too much. But like Pre-Power is like the second sub branch of the Pretty Series, which follows Pretty Rhythm. And it's basically about like, I had a friend who like once described it as like a idol club penguin that you magically go inside.
Okay,
It's a lot
sure.
it's a lot wackier of a show, and like it goes pretty zany, ridiculous, almost like the people writing the show are yes-anding each of the, like the bits kind of escalate over time as the show goes on, which does mean like going back to like this first season, I'm like, well, it's still wacky, but it's also weird how like relatively normal it is compared to future seasons. Like these first like 10-ish episodes range has been I've seen so far, I've been like, oh, this is kind of normal. Like it's obviously goofier and like a bit zanier than like Aikatsu, but it's like it doesn't feel as like unhinged as like a lot of the later episodes get. But yeah, that one like my experience watching has been a bit spotty because like I watched season 1 over a decade ago, like when it aired, because it aired in like 2014. Same as like Hatsu, incidentally. And then like season 2 took like forever to get subs, so it took me forever to actually finish that because like I had to like wait for it to be fully translated, kind of. And then season 3 I got like partway through during COVID lockdown in 2020, and then fell off and never got back to it. And so I'm like, well, I'm just gonna start it over and try and keep up at it. And hopefully I do. Like, obviously it's a lot of show to watch, but I'm also like, I'm enjoying it. It's nice to go back to these and like hopefully actually cross them off the list. And then, that's like basically most of what I've been up to. Like, also, I'm trying to like use my newfound like done with school, just be like, oh, I'm gonna tackle all the things that I haven't finished. Like, I've made like 3 attempts in my life to watch Magic Knight Ray Earth, and so I'm picking at it a 4th time to be like, okay, this time for sure, this time I'm gonna actually finish it. Stuff like that. Also started watching Dear Brother for Ghost Divers. But yeah,
yes, that's a perfect ass show, but I can't talk about that till you're done with that. So
yes, yeah. Wow, Katherine likes Dear Brother. That's crazy. I would have never have thought that it would match with her taste. It was mentioned on the first Ghost Divers pod that one of the hosts thought that the Tazaki shots / watercolor, what were they called? Freeze frames. There's a term for that.
No, I know what you mean, but I those are really good.
They're good, but I think the term used in that pod was that they're intrusive, and I kind of feel it more in this show than in any other. Like he's just like almost every other scene, like there's a freeze frame or something like that, and it's just like this is crazy. I think you need to calm down a little bit. But also these girls aren't calming down, so some teenagers are terrible and evil. But yeah, it's just I have nothing exciting to report. I should maybe try and catch up to Gav by this time next month. But I guess, we don't have to go too long. Do you want to get into the main event?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so first of all, the production. As you remember last time, no money, but despite that, movie did pretty good. And that combined with the American funding meant we're going to get more sequels. Better buckle up. Director Noriaki Yuasa apparently said this is the first, with Virus' success, this is the first time he was troubled by a film's success. And, turned out he was right, because some of the higher-ups at Daiei was like, man, that was so good, you should do 2 Gamera movies a year. And Yuasa was like, that's stupid. No, I'm only doing 1. Shut the fuck up.
Oh god, can you imagine?
I think they'd be like half an hour and maybe just a lot more clip show. Nissan Takahashi is once again back as writer. He just seems like it's his job now. The current producer seems to be Kazumasa Nakano. Nakano. I don't know why I say it like that. For this movie, the space race and the Apollo missions have been ramping up, so these things serve as inspirations to the plot. If I'm not mistaken, Neil Armstrong wasn't on the moon yet, but he probably would soon be. Just to put things in perspective. Remember, this is 1969, where we're currently at. The idea of a planet on the opposite side of the sun to the Earth was one long explored in science fiction. This incidentally included, released in the same year, the British science fiction movie Doppelganger, released in the US as Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. This movie is produced by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson of Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet fame. So there they are again for you, those of you who keep track of how much we mention them on the main show. Have you ever watched Thunderbirds, Katherine?
I have not.
Okay. I only mention it because, like, I guess you live in the UK, but you moved there.
Yeah, I moved there I moved there when I started university, when I started undergrad, so I wasn't like raised there,
Yeah, but also like Thunderbirds was like a big inspiration for like the guys who like originally made Ultraman, so it's come up a lot weirdly, unexpectedly on the podcast. So
that's fun. That's fun.
And of course, Red is British, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a thing. So we got, once again, we got our formula. We got 2 child heroes, 1 token white kid, and 1 Japanese kid. Because that's the American money got asked for the white kid. The kid Akio was originally set to be played by the famous at the time child actor Yoshinobu Kaneko, but he had to tearfully turn down the role because he just started out junior high and wanted to focus on his studies. So the role instead went to some guy named Nobuhiro Kashima, which I don't think he had any other acting roles after this. When later in the movie, Kashima was asked if he could shave his head for that one scene. We'll get to that. He was asked for 5,000 yen as compensation, which at the time was like closer to $14. but in current $14 US, but in current money is like $128 for it to US. So I guess I guess maybe if he held on to it, good for him. The kid Tom was played by Christopher Murphy, who was another American child living in Japan at the time. I think with a military, I know, with some family. According to production stuff, his dad's condition for him to be able to do the movie was, you had to make sure your grades are good. Which meant that apparently in the next movie, when they tried to get him back, his grades were bad, he couldn't come and do it. But they did get his sister for the next movie, apparently, so that's fun. Tom's mom, Elsa, was played by Edith Hansen, who was a TV personality in Japan and would go on to become the head of Amnesty International Japan in the late 80s and 90s. She apparently also worked in a different kaiju work, which is the live-action TV adaptation of Tezuka's Bastard Magma, which had actually beat Ultraman by 6 days, the title of the first in-color toku on TV. Then we have Kondo the Friendly Cop, Naruto Cop, is played by a famous, at the time, comedian Kon Omura, since, he was a guy who liked children, and you also thought he'd be a good fit, bring a good energy to the movie. We have a couple of returning actors. First of all, Florbella, one of the evil aliens, is played by Reiko Kasehara, who previously played the older sister in Versus Gyaos. She's back, but evil this time.
Yeah, but it's kind of fun to like reuse actors in shared franchise movies that don't have a lot of characters that port over, but like put them in different roles. I think that's a fun way of doing it.
I think one of the fun ones in Kamen Rider is like getting Kamen Rider Guiron and then making him like an evil villain in Forza. Tell me if you recognize this one. Do you know Professor Shiga, the doctor in this movie?
The doctor in this movie is in it for like 3 frames.
Yeah, I know he's not in it a lot, so that's why I heard a question.
The only reason I remember him is because I finished the movie 10 minutes before we started recording.
So Dr. Shiga is played by Eiji Funakoshi, who previously played Dr. Hidaka in the first movie.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently, Funakoshi had kept his acting career a secret from his son until elementary school, at which point he went and took him to see this movie without telling him he was in it, and then his son saw his dad on the screen and was like, "What the fuck? That's my dad!" Loudly in the movie theater, to the annoyance of the audience.
That's pretty fun.
Of course, the real star, Gamera, has a new suit actor this time. Yumenesco Uzumi, who's did some monster work in Ultraman at this point. Meanwhile, our main kaiju this week, or month, or I guess back then year, Guiron was designed by Akira Inoue and Tomohisa Yano, as well as sculpted by Eizo Kaimai. Originally they're going to go for more like a flat flounder shape, but it kind of became more shark-like and knife-like over time. They kind of over time, it was going to be more biological, but eventually kind of just became more like a weapon, a living weapon. And they had to make the suit more accommodating to the actor, so that's why they kind of dropped the flounder shape, because you couldn't really fit a person in a flounder suit. Ninjas were big at the time, so Yuasa was like, "Hey, let's give him a shuriken."
Yeah, I mean, I'm down.
Incidentally, there's scenes in the movie where Gamera tries to block the shurikens with rocks, and those are based off of some of Dai's Zatoichi movies, which is a series I'm not familiar with, but I know it's it exists and there's a lot of them. And I believe, do you know anything about Zatoichi? Have you heard the name before?
I have not. Tell me more.
I have not done the research. I think I just know that he's about a blind, wandering samurai.
Yeah, fair.
I think he's like the name inspiration of Zato 1 from Guilty Gear as well, who's also blind.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I don't know who the suit actor is for Guiron. They seem to not credit the suit actors for these kaiju, who aren't Gamera.
I kind of don't like that, but
I don't like it.
What can we do about it now?
Yeah.
Are the modern movies, like modern movies of this type, better about that, or?
We'll see. Even Ultraman at this era is kind of weird. Like, there's usually like one suit actor for the kaiju, and it's usually easy enough to go, well, this is the guy who's going to get the whole show. But even then, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I know for sure. I think the newer shows, I think the more modern stuff in shows is like usually referencing this stuff a bit more though. They initially actually wanted to add a second entirely new kaiju to the movie, but they didn't have the budget or time to do it. So what they did was they just took Gyaos and spray painted it silver. I was like, oh, now it's a space Gyaos. So that's why he's here. Planet Terror was built with the vinyl tubing and other cheap materials through the budget, though I think it still looks pretty decent in spite of that. They also less special effects overall because of the budget, which meant that's another reason why they continue to choose extreme violence in the kaiju scenes as a spectacle instead. More on that later. The soundtrack for this movie and the next two would be done by Shunsuke Kikichi, who would later become the composer for Doraemon and Dragon Ball.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that either. It seems for now that, despite at this point, I think we're just in a pattern. So there isn't anything like notable. Like, oh, the movie is at this point, like most of the, it's like, oh, the movie came out and did well enough. There isn't really like much about like the accolades and kind of stuff. So it's kind of right now the status seems to be, despite everything, despite the bunch of cuts, Gamera is still enough of a success even with this movie for them to keep making them. Look at the pinned schedule. We got like 2 more before a time jump. So buckle up. And it seems to be doing enough financially well that's even like keeping Daiei afloat during a financial rough patch. Who can say what will happen in the future? What direction this will go? As a sidebar, one notable event at the same time for Daiei was one of the biggest young stars at the age of 37. Raizo Ichikawa, the 17th, also known as Yoshia Oda, passed away of cancer. He was also the husband of the adopted daughter of Masaichi Nagata, the president of the company. His adopted daughter, Masako. So, kind of like really important name and face of the company in a way. Dying really young. And also a time when maybe Daiei is like isn't really in a position to maybe lose some of its biggest stars. That's already kind of like going elsewhere anyway.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so, not to spoil things that are ahead, but some people looked back at this moment retroactive as like, oh, this was actually a harbinger of things to come. But we'll see. We'll see what's coming up next. For now, though, just a few notes on some contemporaries, which I've been missing in some of the past ones. Godzilla would still continue, despite the lies last time that they would stop. So there's All Monsters Attack is out this year, and like this is the first of what is sometimes called by fans the Champion series, because it's like these showed at like I think they call the Toho Champion matinees for kids. At this point, so I think this is a point where Godzilla comes more of like a kiddie franchise compared to a more adult one that was more adult general audience one that was trying to be before. Perhaps I
think we already got their last movie. Like, I think this one.
No, I said talk about Godzilla.
Oh.
Yeah, this is like talk about contemporary Godzilla. Yeah, sorry.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just,
no.
At this point, Godzilla seems to have maybe because of yeah. So Godzilla at this point, maybe because of Gamera's influence, has kind of transitioned to being more of a kid-friendly series.
Right.
Also, this is the year that we see the final episode of Operation Mystery, which was it's the horror detective series, and production-wise, follow-up to Ultra 7. from Super Eye Productions, and also the last TV show that's AG Tsuburaya would work on before he passed away. And at this point, the company Super Eye Productions is gonna hit into a rocky patch because they don't have any projects. Go listen to the first episode of our Return to Ultraman coverage for a bit of that. But for now, transitioning into the movie itself. Shall I give you the summary that I definitely did not write immediately before we started recording?
Yeah, go
because
for
we started
it.
recording and then I wrote it and then we started a fresh recording because I was just writing it. All right, so here is the poem for Gamera versus Giant Evil Beast Guiron. Are aliens real? Please ignore the last movie. That guy's a knife. How will Sister explain this? Maybe space won't help us. How'd I do?
You hit everything. There's not a lot else in this movie.
Yeah, I think it had to be more rack-strapped with this one, but you know. We press on. Like this movie, which starts with a bunch of space footage, which I think I saw was like actually sourced from the Soviet Union, so that's fun. This time we actually don't get a shot of Gamera before the title card. It's mostly just like there's a lot of stars in the space in the sky, and then there's this star's in trouble. Oh no! And the title card goes, and we just see like a lot of bubbling lava. And we kind of immediately jump to like all these. We're getting these radio waves from space, and like all the scientists are like, "What's up with that? What's up with that?" And like we kind of get like this. We have our Dr. Shiga giving reports like, "Is aliens? Who can say?" We got some waves from outside the solar system. I mean, now we got some from inside the solar system. But as far as we know, it's not like there's any life out there, and none that could reach us, so... Who can say?
I do appreciate how they, like, double down on the sci-fi vibes from the last film.
Yeah, I wasn't, like, sure. I didn't expect them to do, like, aliens the second time. But I guess it's kind of like, maybe it's just, like, it is a space race era, so it's kind of in the air. Yeah, so basically the scientists are like, I don't know, it could be aliens, but maybe not. It's kind of hard. Like, there's no aliens in the solar system, obviously. Meanwhile, the kids, as Yuasa likes to do in his movies, the kids are right. Shep adults. And so they kind of see like, we got Akio, we got Tom, and we got Tomoko, who are like looking at a telescope and like, oh shit, there's a spaceship. And then their mom comes in and is like, well, kids, enough playing with a telescope, we gotta go to sleep. And the kid's like, what was a spaceship? What if the aliens? Like, the scientists did think aliens could be real. And she's like, I don't believe in that nonsense. And that's how she is for the whole movie.
Yes, it's kind of interesting to me that, like, they have American characters in this movie because, like, they're required to by the distributors and such.
Yeah.
I guess, it's funny to me that the American mother is portrayed as, like, a little more evil, air quotes, and unbelieving than the Japanese mother. I would feel like I'm not getting my international distribution money.
I actually think the opposite, but we'll get to that, I think. For starters, we basically have a scene where like they go out biking in the morning to go see the spacecraft that definitely landed. They play some pranks on Kondo, the bumbling cop who's like practicing kendo. Tom does this cool trick where he like shoots his air gun and like knocks Kondo's towel he's using for sweat onto the wall of his police box. And and thus bringing the hammer of justice on them, as Kondo is like, hey, don't ride two people on the same bicycle. But then I guess first of all, how do you feel about Kondo as a guy, as a cop?
He's an okay guy. He's also not in this movie that much, but I appreciate how he like listens to the children.
Yeah, as we'll get to later, he's like the only one who actually believes the children.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to spoil the movie, but
yeah, the movie that we're going to talk about in like 20 minutes anyway. Yeah, so they basically go to like the forest. Tomoko gets distracted by a bunny, but the bunny kind of takes up the spaceship. The kids are like, damn. Like, Akio has this thing where he's like, there's all these problems on Earth, and presumably if the civil... He buys into Fermi's paradox, basically. He doesn't know the word for it, but that's what he's doing. He's like, listen, if there's an advanced there's an advanced civilization that can travel along the stars, clearly they must have figured out enough that they don't have, like, wars and traffic jams, which are his two go-to words. Or no, he's a traffic accidents, actually.
I guess that is kind of how a child would conceive of bad things in the world, right? Like, every bad thing happens because you die in a war or in a car crash.
Yes. It does feel like it's, like, true to, like... There's, like, the big thing you can't actually imagine, but you know is bad, and the thing that's, like, more mundane and real.
Right.
And... So, like, Tomoko brings the really funny point that's also true is, like, listen, if there's alien, how would they know Japanese? And the boys are like, shut up. And they go inside the spaceship. And they're like, oh, we're gonna fiddle with it, because this is a smart thing to do. And then the spaceship just flies away. And Tomoko's just kind of left with a bag of, like, how do I even explain this to anyone? And then basically the spaceship gets to Earth. It gets to space really fast. There's some meteors, and then we get our first introduction to Gamera. This time a bit more decent ways into the movie than like last time, which I think is interesting because, like, remember the last two movies is like Yuasa almost felt like he needed to get Gamera in frame one just to get the kids on their seat.
Yeah, maybe it's because the last one like sold gangbusters. They felt like they had a little bit more creative freedom with this one, is kind of the vibe I get.
Yeah, maybe they like had the confidence to like do it. And also just like they also just like, one, they could trust the kids would be there. And two, also like maybe it was just to be like, hey, space for a little bit. They don't linger on this scientist stuff as much at the start. Like they do. Like I guess in some way it like almost feels like a throwback to how the scientists talk at the start, but you know, they don't linger on it too much. Like it's.
Oh, we talked about this I think a little bit earlier, but it is really interesting to me that kind of the more like science-y elements of Gamera get discarded for this movie. Like, there aren't any scientists really for any extended time. They don't have operations that you see a lot of the like minutiae of.
Yeah, is like I think even the last movie kind of had military in it.
Yeah.
But like this is the first one where we don't really have the military at all, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, because the last one had like, oh, are we gonna kill the two children to save the world? Yes. Like all that stuff.
And Miyazaki got annoyed.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess another thing about there's no operations in this movie, and it's kind of like almost feels like it feels weird that they still keep feeling the need to have the scientist in as a vestigial like thing.
Yes, though we once again want to emphasize that they are in this movie for maybe 1 minute. Like, I'm being a little hyperbolic.
I mean, it is a bit more. It's a bit more like they have the reporters later. We'll get to them, but yeah. And maybe part of it is because like they were going for like more of the the secret 10th planet is like a sci-fi angle.
Right.
10th because Pluto was still a planet at this time. Rip. But yeah, we have Gamera. He's doing some cool stuff. But like, we get this part where Gamera tries to like stop them, but like can't. And then the ship seems to like speed up past him, and like he can't catch up. And it's sort of like, Gamera knows something's wrong, but he can't verbally communicate to the kids, and the kids are like, this is weird. I think there's some parts here where the kids also don't act well, where they're like, oh, look, it's Gamera. I feel secure. I think. Do you remember that part?
Yes.
There's definitely some parts
that was good.
I think the kids in the last movie were better actors.
Probably, though. The thing is, ironically, because I think of children as child actors, I have no way of judging a child actor's acting skills. It all kind of just is child actor noise to me.
Well, I think it's just you can tell sometimes. Like, I think some kids just do have it in other way others don't. Like kids are gonna be kids, but like some of them can like know how to play a part and do well for the camera, and also like give a good delivery. Like, you can tell like a kid's just like saying shit versus like actually doing a line of different delivery. I also just realized, like, in both these movies, the white kid has like some kind of gadget or weapon of choice that he uses. Like Jim from the last movie had his lasso, and the Tom in this movie has his gun.
Yeah.
Which I guess feels very American coded.
How do we feel about going from like Boy Scout boys to like like planet obsessed boys? I can't think of the word.
I guess it just makes sense a bit. Like, it'd be boring if it was just the Boy Scouts again.
That's true. That's true.
Which do you find more?
Which do you find more like fun, personally?
I don't think that I find the Boy Scouts interesting, but I do think I find Jimmy Neutron Boy and Genius fun, which these kids are not.
Yeah.
But also, I think it'd be boring if we had a second Jimmy Neutron Boy and Genius. These guys just like know space pretty good, which I think is fine for this kind of movie.
Yeah.
I think it works because like they like know a lot of stuff. They in some ways they know more about space than they know a lot more about space than their peers. Definitely more than their parents. Like, reminds me of like when I was a kid, I like absorbed books on dinosaurs, and like I knew a lot more scientific facts about dinosaurs than my parents and like most of my adult peers, because it's just like most people don't care about that stuff.
Yes, I was never super into dinosaurs, but I did have a space phase.
Yeah.
I probably have some. God knows what house it's in, but I went to like the Virginia Space Museum or whatever when I was 8 or something, and I got a DVD from there, and I'm sure I still own that DVD somewhere.
Nice. Yeah. And like, it's sort of like I think it's kind of like, obviously the US is all about like the kids can understand a truth the adults don't, and some of that's like the kids can see that the aliens are real when the parents are really stubborn about it. And also just like space knowledge, but also like some of the themes of the movie is like their love of space and the interest in space and the academic knowledge of space isn't preparing them for the realities of what's out there. They come with a different expectation, which I think is interesting.
Right.
I'm kind of reframing my thoughts before we talk about it because of which I guess is podcasting. Is this point where Tomoko tries to explain what's happened, and it's like kind of a hard thing where like the mom thinks she's just like, oh, the kids are like playing and giving us a cover story, and Tomoko's like, no, it's real. But then the mom's like, first of all, she's like, doesn't nag anything. Oh, you shouldn't believe this stuff. You have to worry about your studies. And 2 is like, aliens aren't real. I don't believe that nonsense. And the Tomoko's like, but the scientists in the newspaper say it's real. And she's like, well, it's still fake. She's an anti-vaxxer.
So true.
But yeah, Tomoko's like obviously in a not good position as like a child who's like watched an unbelievable thing happen and has to try and explain it to people who like don't believe it, even when it's like arguably the intellectual authorities of the world do believe it, but the normal people think it's just fake. Don't believe the news, I guess. It's so much like really, this is the perfect move for 2025. I don't actually believe this. Please don't. I'm not like those Blue Sky users. Please. But yeah, eventually you get the ship crash lands on Earth. Not on Earth. It lands on another planet, and the kids are like, "Damn, it sure is crazy that we can breathe air here and don't need the suits. I wonder if there's a budget thing." But now they're on the planet. How do you think about the planet that they just got to? How do you think of the set?
I liked the planet set in this movie. I liked most of the sets, honestly. They were like they're not we have dank money sets, but like they are they really have a vibe of like a okay old Star Trek episode set, which I can fuck with.
They're not dank money, but they are more than we only have 2 sets budget. Like the last movie.
Oh,
it's definitely they had like a little bit more money to put into this stuff, and they were like obviously cut costs. They used cheap material, but they managed to make it look pretty decent. At least for like
I think them having more money for this one, because the last one blew up, really works in this movie's favor.
Absolutely. And this is only like Kaiju, the first Kaiju in the movie, and the kids are like, "Oh, it's Gauss. Wait a minute, it's like Dragon Quest hasn't been invented yet, but it's like a palette swap Gauss, so it must be Space Gauss." It's all chrome. And I guess if you thought that the second appearance of Gauss would give it any favors, sorry, because it's about to get his ass kicked. Because the water in the rivers runs dry, and then a new big knife kaiju comes out, Guiron. And first, like, Youst does a Gauss beam, and Guiron just like reflects it back and blows up Gauss's leg. And then Gauss tries to do like a whole bunch of like a swooping maneuver, and then Guiron does like a backflip and severs Gauss's wing, and then proceeds to just like butcher it. And the kids are like, "Oh damn, it's trying to eat it," and then Gauss is like, "Nah, it stinks. Guiron's gonna go away." But it just like kind of just butchers Gauss for fun, and he's like, "Damn, that's kind of gross, nasty." So what do you think? What do you think about the first appearance of our new guy?
I like our new guy, honestly.
Yeah, he was. Oh, you go.
He's cool.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how you feel about him, but like he was one of the ones I knew about in advance, and I was like, I'm looking forward to this guy. He looks cool.
Yeah, I definitely think he got a pretty good showing in this movie overall. I think the actual like fight choreography in air quotes, because I can't really think of what else to call it in this movie, is not particularly good, but the somehow they still pull through.
Yeah, I think the suit looks good too. Like all things considered, it looks pretty nice. It's funny that like you just have some scenes where like their shuriken holes are there and clearly shurikening, and other ones where it's clearly like filled, because I guess maybe they had like 2 variants of the suit or something. Maybe there's just a plug there. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, this is like feels impractical, but like it works. It's like a dumb, cool, goofy guy who's like also really menacing. And then we get in some teleport shenanigans. There's a cute little scene where they try and teleport away from Guiron, but then teleport right next to it, and it's like, well, we gotta go back. And then they get into some buildings as Guiron goes back underwater or underground. And then they kind of just start wandering in the alien base. There's a little moving platform on the ground. We get some like aliens in the shadows until they eventually meet the aliens in the control room. They do some shenanigans to get some universal translation on, and they're like, hello, we are the definitely friendly aliens, and there's planet Terra on the opposite side of the Earth. And they kind of say, like, oh yeah, we Terrans got like complete mental, with our minds we control nature, and we have complete mastery over it. That includes Guiron, the Kaiju, who's our guard dog. However, the computer, the controlled nature went crazy, and then we just got a bunch of Kaiju, and our planet's destroyed, and we tried to send out some health through radio waves, no one came, and then we tried to send a spaceship, and that blew up and died, and so now we're the only ones left. And the kids are like, damn, that sucks. I think they also say that like there's some glaciers approaching, so it's kind of like it's not going to be good in the short term either. But I feel like it's also a thing they don't really talk about in this movie much. Like it's just kind of say, yeah, there's glaciers coming. But yeah, so did you suspect these aliens from the start, or?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously, we're not the target audience, so we can read this a bit more. But you know,
I feel like even if like the target audience is kids who had seen the last one, they probably would have guessed it, because it is kind of just reusing the setup from that.
Yeah. It might be one of those things where it's like a kid will obviously figure it out still, but also they'd feel really smart about it.
Yes.
Yeah, even this conversation, they kind of whisper at each other suspiciously. But also kids are like, damn, if only Gamera was here, he'd save the day. And the kid, and the aliens are, what the fuck's Gamera? Who's on his way, but first of all, the kids are taken to a resting room. And so, like, the aliens are like, okay, we're gonna eat them, but first, let's get some questions out of them. Akio's like, oh man, I'm hungry, and he gets like frozen. And Tom's like, what the fuck's up with this? So the alien like imagines Tom's, like, first mentions Akio's mom's donut recipe. I'm like, well, I know. I wish I had homemade donuts.
Yes.
Second, we get our second clip show as Akio's like, the alien's like, okay, how many kaiju are there on Earth? And Akio's like, there's none. Gamera killed them all.
Yes. And then I was like, oh no, I know where this is going.
And so we get like a clip show of like basically we get like, oh hey, Akio's like, oh yeah, Gamera's a friend of the children. We get like all the scenes of like Gamera helping the children, which is like, damn, it's weird. There's only one movie that's not included in this.
Gamera 2.
But yeah, the Terrans are always like, well, they say that the kids are saying Gamera was following them, so we need to learn more information before we eat their brains. Tom was doing this exchange because Tom keeps trying to wake up Akio, who gets frozen, but then they get both unfrozen, and they're like very confused. And so like, well, okay, we're gonna eat their brains to unlock their knowledge, and head to Earth. This part where we're back on Earth, we get Tom's mom, Elsa, white woman spotted, comes to pick up Tom. Akio's mom's like, Tom wants to stay, he's fine, because she's like still thinking it's a cover story and tries to like cover for the mom. And so Elsa leaves, but Tomoko seeks the car, and like, at least at first, it seems like Elsa is going to be like more willing to listen. But then what happens is like, Tomoko takes Elsa and Kondo to the landing site. And Elsa's like, well, this is still fake, the alien stuff. And meanwhile, Kondo seems to at first to humor her, but as we find out later, he seems to actually believe her. We see Tomoko like kind of like, oh damn, I hope the boys are okay. And there's a part where I wonder, like, didn't virus happen last year, guys? Didn't we have aliens last time? It reminds you of like one of those things that we had in some of the earlier 70s Ultraman, where like we'd have kids reporting to the teams, hey, there's an alien, there's a kaiju, and like teams who had experience fighting aliens and kaijus all the time are like, this kid's making shit up. It's like one of those things where like, oh, we had aliens last time.
The way I always rationalize stuff like that is that I kind of just assume that like off screen there are like false reports of like kids being like, whoa, an alien showed up.
Anyway, the Terrans bring milk and donuts, and Aki's like, damn, that's weird. That's crazy. These donuts are exactly like my mom's. Probably just a coincidence. Aki has Gamera senses, but they end up thinking he's just imagining it because Dom doesn't sense it, even though Gamera is on the way. But they fall asleep because they've got sleeping powder in the donut, and so then they put Akio in the device and shave his head, and they're about to like saw his brain open, and the Gamera comes.
It's a little more brutal than I expected.
Yeah. Like they actually went like a lot closer than I expected. Like they was like down to the wire. I was like, damn, are they doing this? Gamera shows up. Missiles don't do anything. And then Guiron attacks. Knife doesn't seem to work, but then it seems to like eventually like do some damage, like just for persistence on the shell. There's a lot of like Gamera throwing Guiron around, fire breath. This is where Guiron has shurikens. Gamera gets pretty hurt here, and then just kind of just like back flops into the water and sinks to the bottom. Where he's doing his healing thing. That's what Gamera likes to do. And the Terran's like, well, he's definitely dead. But then Tom wakes up at this point, and he basically like punches Aki and wakes him up. Aki's like, damn, my hair. And Tom's like, don't worry, I have a convenient hat. This was Chekhov's gun. not to confuse my air gun and my hot gun, which will also be a plot important later. We get like a Scooby-Doo chase with the teleporters, where like the kids try and like they get the Terrans into the teleporter and like, oh, don't worry, we'll break the teleporter controls and they won't be able to get us. And then the Terrans just like, oh, stupid, we just did a round trip, doofus. And then they catch and put him in a cage. And meanwhile, this time back on Earth, Tomoko is like just in the yard, and then suddenly like all these reporters come. It's like, hey, the aliens that we believe are real, can you tell us about them? And Kama was like, yeah, I told them all. I told all the reporters and the scientists of the world, or at least in Japan. So at this point, as the Terrans are starting to like, they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna repair the ship, and then go to Earth, probably to do invasion stuff. They call out to Gamera, who's still like healing, and then Tom tries to like aim his dart gun at the control panel. And this cage is like really weirdly designed, because it's like a cage, but also there's like a plastic covering around it that surrounds it, with a singular hole for Tom to stick his gun in. Maybe not classic, but like glass. But it's just funny. It's like, oh yeah, it's like it's not just like he stuck his hand through the bars of the cage. It's like there's like a glass thing around the cage, and there's a hole in the glass.
Yup.
And then they hit a switch that summons Guiron, and they're like, oh, okay, put it back if it doesn't work. And so then what happens is the Terrans finish fixing the ship, and then like they're like, oh damn, we can't control Guiron from here. And they try to escape to Earth, but then the ship gets bisected instead. And then one of the sisters gets pinned under a chair, and the other one's like, hey, we live in a social Darwinist society, then shoots her in the head. This was ridiculous to me.
It was pretty funny. I laughed.
I'm like, hold on. You're like, what are the two left? What's the point in this? What did you seek to gain here? What was the benefit? Maybe this is why your civilization died.
Maybe.
Basically, Guiron rampages enough that the buildings get destroyed and the kids are able to get freed. Then Guiron decides to like smash some rocks to just like harass Gamera while he's underwater. But this pisses off Gamera enough that he escapes.
I think it's around here. I really like the. For some reason, I got kind of entranced by the bit where Gamera's like hanging off the rope.
Yeah, Gamera like starts flying out and he starts doing like the Olympic swing, which is like a
Yeah.
it's probably one of the more iconic things from this movie, I think, or just like one of the most iconic Gamera things. Where they sort of look how wacky Gamera is. I think I read that like it was inspired by like the fact the Olympics were in the previous year, so.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'll probably use that as the thumbnail for the YouTube version. Rip to Guiron, but I'm sorry, like the Gamera Olympics spin is too good.
Too iconic.
Yeah, Gamera basically like he like starts swinging like he starts doing like a swing on the rail, one way and starts swinging the other way to go tackle Guiron. The fire breath doesn't seem to work on the blade, which he just reflects it. So Gamera does Goomba Stomp instead. Guiron shoots his shurikens into Gamera's arms, and then the kids are like, "Oh no, that means he can't turn into a shell and go jet mode." So the kids then press the button to get Guiron to go back to the cave. The lone Terran starts being like, "Oh damn, I thought I was Gamera alive. Also, there's no power. I can't do anything." But then Guiron, I guess, goes berserk again. At the same time that some missiles come out. I don't actually know what the point was getting Guiron to go back into the cave, other than, I don't know, 2 seconds break. But we get like a scene where like Gamera again, he's like trying to rip off the shurikens out of his arms and heal underwater, and then Guiron dives in the water, so we get a bit of a water scene, which is cool. And we kind of get the kill shot where Gamera just flies him out of the water, and then does a suplex to basically stab Guiron's knife into the ground, so he's stuck. Then we get something like really goofy where first Tom fires the missile. One blows up the last alien. She's dead. Rip. And then the other one just gets caught by Gamera, who's holding his hand. And then he kind of just does some dodge roll. He just dodges his shoulder, so he doesn't hit with the shurikens. And then the kids are like, "Oh, Gamera, stick in the hole!" And Gamera just kind of throws the missile in like a hole in Guiron's face, left by the shurikens, and then it explodes. And then Gamera get the kids get in the ship. Gamera uses the fire breath to weld the ship back together. Carries them home. And everyone's like, "Oh shit, Gamera's come back. We got to go back to the place where the crop circle was." It wasn't actually crop circle, but where the ship landed. And so everyone, all the extras in the movie, all the scientists, including the scientists who were only in for 2 seconds, all the bombs, etc., all go to the place. Gamera comes, drops the kids off, and the mom's like, "We're sorry, we didn't believe you about the aliens." And the kids are like, "We're sorry, we did something stupid and went to space. But also we saw space, and it's cool out there." I think Tobiko has a line where she calls Kanto an alien. I can't tell if that was a joke. I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was just meant to be a bit of a strange joke.
This kind of last section is like a bunch of really weird dialogue and humor. Where if I should be just like, "We're trying to wrap up the movie now." And Akio gives this big speech like, "Yeah, we discovered these other planets, and we thought other planets would be utopian, where they don't have wars or traffic accidents. But turns out that one also sucked. And so maybe what we need to do is stop going to space and solve our problems here on Earth. And Dr. Chico's like, oh, you learned a lesson.
Kind of relevant movie for the modern age if you think about it.
Yeah, also relevant for the time, probably.
Yes.
And then you get, also funny enough, first we get the scene where, like, Akio, like, he's just like, yeah, shit was bad, and he takes off the hat, and like, Kono's like, oh, you shaved your head as an apology. But also, like, yeah, he's like, Akio just like gives his like speech, oh, yeah, maybe we should fix Earth before we go and try and like see the space as all of our solutions to our problems. And then Dr. Shiga and Gamera are both like, so true. And he leaves, and everyone just says, oh, okay, goodbye, Gamera, and then movie ends.
Yeah.
So this is more of a real movie compared to the last one, I'd say.
I agree. Like, it's still kind of in the formula, but they have they have more money.
Like, they still had to rely on like some reused footage, some of the same footage, but it's also like it's lots of it, and it's also kind of placed in a way that kind of makes sense, at least.
Yeah.
It's not as bad. Like, obviously we're still getting like the footage from the first movie is still black and white, which, yeah, it's weird and stuff, but at least when it's a flashback, it's at least less egregious than like oh, Gamera is destroying Tokyo. Cut to old footage in black and white of Gamera destroying Tokyo, as if this is a currently happening event.
Don't even want to think about that.
It was crazy. I can't believe they did that. I guess movies can be anything, though. But yeah, we get like more of a real movie. There's like a plot. Most of the movies just like kids going to an adventure to a place. There's like a bit of a timely moral at the end. I guess it's like this is technically like if you want to count it, there's like an isekai where like the real world still matters.
Yes.
Which like almost never happens.
Yeah, sure. This is an isekai film.
Yeah, Futurama's an isekai. Space Jam's an isekai. Planet of the Apes is an isekai if you think about it. Oh, you're agreeing with me. I can't believe this. But yeah, yeah, I think it's, this movie has more characters than the two kids, which I don't think we can say with the last movie.
Yes, this is also true. This movie has like half a dozen or so characters.
Yeah, because we have the two kids, we have the villainous aliens, we have the two moms, we have the sister, and we have the cop, who's a nice guy.
Yeah.
And Dr. Chica for 5 minutes told screen sign. Yeah, I think it's is like a fun adventure movie. This does feel like the kind of thing where like I think that's the thing about it. It feels like the kind of thing where like if a Western studio in the 90s made a directed in the 90s and 2000s made a directed video movie, this would be like what this is gonna be.
Yeah, it does really have that like direct-to-DVD vibes.
Especially in the no money zone.
For real.
It is having the palettes up. Yeah, this is really funny, and having it like job to the new kaiju is also really funny.
For sure.
It's like one of those things where it feels like, oh, they got the really strong old kaiju, but now it got beaten by the new kaiju. So that's how you know the new kaiju is the real shit.
This is some like shonen or wrestling type storytelling. I don't do wrestling, but I have friends who do, so I'm like vaguely aware of like the kind of tropes and stuff.
I think I've seen exactly 5 episodes of Lucha Underground. Because I had a friend who showed it to me once. But yeah, I don't have much reference for wrestling either. But I do have reference for like, in Ultraman, we had Ultraman Ace, where like, they tried to like make the new kaiju cooler by calling them choju, or like, you know, like super monsters, or which translated into English as terrible monsters for some reason.
That's pretty funny.
But then the first episode of Taro has like a 2 kaiju. One is labeled a choju, and that choju gets killed by another kaiju. And it's supposed to be like, oh, these new kaiju in Taro, they're the real shit compared to the choju. And it's like, this is goofy. This is dumb. Yeah, despite how iconic Gyaos is supposed to be, not a good showing from this time. It's really kind of comical, just the way he worst. Like,
yeah,
he's just like I think I've seen the gif of like Gyaos shooting the beam and getting reflected back and blowing off its own leg, and I thought this is one of the funniest things I've seen in my life, even before watching this movie.
And then, it's pretty good. It's pretty good even in context, though.
Yeah, and then it's just really funny, and but also at the same time kind of cool. Just like Guiron just does a fucking backflip, and because he's a knife, just like cuts off Gyaos' wing midair. And just like, you know, it's like kind of fucked up, but it's like kind of cool. It's just like, oh man, this fucked up evil kaiju is just gonna like knife kaiju, just like butchering this other kaiju just for like the hell of it. And yeah, like I guess, you know, it is kind of like a fun moral, just to be like, oh yeah, like space is cool, but don't fall into the utopian vision of it. But I guess, yeah, it is kind of like there is a vision of that been trying to be sold today of like, we're definitely going to make the uninhabitable planet of Mars more livable than the infinitely more livable Earth is. Like, that's a viable option.
Exactly.
Like, oh yeah, you can just replace the the really, really nice, like, even as things get worse, like Earth that probably is like his worst, unless it gets like full Venus territory, is like infinitely more livable than Mars would ever be. I guess, you know, that's like kind of like, that's probably like probably like maybe one thing to think about the space race, whereas like you had the two superpowers like kind of like in kind of like an arms race to like outdo each other in like scientific achievement.
Right.
Which, you know, imperialist propaganda being like, oh, the USSR won on everything except for the moon, which is like the most spectacular one, and therefore the US gets all the credit for winning. And also probably, you know, the space race and all the weapons arms race probably had a lot to do with like not helping the Soviet economy when it probably needed it. But with the US siege on all socialist countries, kind of like forced its hand kind of thing, etc. But, you know, there's probably like an element to that, like reflected in this movie, where it's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have these arms races. If maybe we should solve the problems of Earth instead of like trying to just like outdo each other on the space match. Even if it's not, you know, not necessarily looking at the perspective of me as like a communist who's like, oh, well, you know, this is all the evil US's plan. But yeah. I guess, you know, it's also the perspective like the moon landings hadn't happened yet, but were very, very up and coming. Like we had a bit these, you know, bringing up the main VOD, but like I think we had an episode of Ultraman Ace that we had one that featured the moon prominently, and we had a conversation of like, oh yeah, this like the lunar landings are still very recent in the context of this episode, and that kind of reframes how we think about this episode a bit.
Right, that makes sense.
And so just, you know, I think it's, you know, it's just things like have that kind of moral of just like kids going on an adventure, and like I know. What are your thoughts? I feel like I have to keep talking more too much in this.
No, I think you got the vibe of it, and I guess like the interesting part of the theme.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's cool that like a cab, but also condo at least is nice.
Yes.
Yeah, what else is there to say about this movie?
I don't really think there is too much else. It kind of hit everything.
Yeah. Like it is like in the formula.
Yeah, I sort of, I don't think this part was on recording, but when we started the call, I was like, oh, this is probably going to be a bit of a shorter episode.
Yeah, that's probably fine. It's already like an hour and a half. So, I guess I think it's going to do pretty alright.
Yeah, it's longer than the movie, so, that's a sign that it's a good length.
Yeah. And like this time we didn't even talk about like Kamen Rider for like as long. So
That's true.
I just want to see if there's anything else. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is pretty self-explanatory. There isn't as much meat in this movie as much as some of the other ones we talked about. And also, like, because they're doing the formula, we only say so much. Yeah, they're doing the formula. I'm hoping that we'll have more to say about like the other ones, and we aren't just repeating ourselves. But like, it might just be for like the rest of this era at least. The formula means that we're going to be like.
How many episodes are left in this era?
Let me just look at the reference sheet. So we have 2. We have Gamera vs. Jiger in 1970, and then Gamera vs. Zigra in 1971.
Okay.
So we have at least 2. After that, we have Gamera Super Monster from 1980, which is a big gap, but also counted as part of the Showa era movies still, and so maybe there'll be some stylists to carry over, but we'll see how that goes. It could be anything. I definitely know for sure there's gonna be like when we get to the Heisei movies,
things are probably gonna change.
I think.
Yeah.
Because it's the 90s at that point. It's gonna be you're gonna have to adapt or die basically. I'm gonna have to get that Blu-ray set soon. Because I only have 3 more movies left. Oh well. But yeah, I'm hoping like obviously it's nice that this movie is still fun, but I'm hoping that like we'll be able to say at least a bit more for the other movies other than they're doing the formula again.
We can only hope.
Yeah. I guess in that case, may as well not. We don't need to belabor it. How about let's do the Kaiju tier list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gamera at the top, and then Virgon.
Yeah.
And then Guiron, our new entry.
So just let's. Okay, so let's first of all. So Gamera obviously S tier, Baragon in A tier. Where's Guiron?
I think also in A tier, like the second part of it.
Okay. I like this. I also like that it's a combo breaker from the previous from the precedent. Because previously we were just like descending the ranks for each movie, but now we have one that's jumped up the top, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Which I was hoping for. I'm glad we got it because I was like, having known the design of this kaiju for a while, I was like, I hope I like him, and he was cool. So I'm glad. Next, okay, so let's make this will be easy. Virus still at the bottom right.
Yeah.
Was he D or C? I forget.
I think he was. I don't remember. I feel like he was C. I think we settled on C.
Okay. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we gotta talk about Gauss. Where's he going?
I think just above Firas.
In B or C?
oh, this movie did not do him any favors. Let's put him on the top of C
Yeah,
for
like-
now.
Okay, so he's been demoted because of this movie, because the movie made him a jobber.
Yes.
We'll see how these ranks change in the future, depending on mood, but also it depends on these kaiju showing up again. Some of them might not show up again until the anime, which we decided. I think we said we were going to actually decide to do it, right?
Yes.
It'll just be outside of the year schedule I made, which is fine. It's just this year has 13 months.
Leap year.
And also there's a 60th year of Gamera, so maybe they'll have something new, some stuff.
We can only
There's stuff yeah. I mean, there's always like side bonus stuff we can do as bonus stuff, but we can see what that as we get further the future.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
So
when
yes,
we get there.
So we have a pretty decent shake-up to the tier list for now. We'll see how that progresses into this next batch of movies. I assume it's going to be like the biggest shake-up will probably be in the 90s when we start getting like probably like we're going to be like, okay, we're going to get new. Well, I don't expect Gamera to move, but if they start reinterpreting some of the older kaiju in the 90s context, it might be more interesting. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And with that, plugs. You plug yourself, Katherine.
What do I have to plug? Yeah, I'm KimiKatherine.bluesky.social. You can follow me on there for Blue Sky stuff. It's mostly a personal account, but maybe you'll find something I have to say interesting or funny. My H page is mismatch-wings.h.io. I'm a VN dev in quotes. I wrote one. I've been really busy, but another will come soon. That's my stuff.
All right. You can follow me at DCrowns on Twitter and Blue Sky. This is on the feed for Ultra Q. That's QUEV. You can follow us at Ultra_Q on Twitter or UltraQ_no_ on Blue Sky. We have an email, ultrapod@gmail.com. I never tell anyone when we're recording these. We never have any Gamera emails. Maybe I'll check for fun and see if we have any.
Yeah, go for it.
But I doubt it. I should probably. I'm really bad about telling people when we're recording. You kind of like decide like really.
Yeah, we just kind of vibe it.
Yeah. Yeah, no one's there. That's fine. But you can always end even when it's not recording time. I will get to it. And then. Yeah, that's about it. We're currently on the main show. We're like nearing the end of Ultra and Leo. And also Red and I are reading Golden Kamuy as a side thing. But
yes,
that's
I've been meaning to check that out.
You should, and also listen to our first pod for that because it's good. We are recording the next one though next Sunday, so look forward to that. Even though maybe that'll already be recorded by the time you're hearing this, though probably won't be out by the time you're hearing this. But yeah. You want to give your sign off?
I'll see you in the depths of Atlantis.
And I'll see you in Shell.